Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Bean and Danny Hauger as they explore the why of teaching.
Hey everybody, Danny Hauger here. Hope you're having an outstanding week. Thank you so much for checking out our show. Are you looking for new and engaging ways to get your students up and moving in the classroom? Get out of the sit and get rut of teaching by checking out ampeduplearning.com, a two-teacher-owned and operated company in Texas that is looking to gamify teaching with creative new activities for the classroom. From their FREC resources and escape rooms for social studies and science to speed squares and task cards for math and English, they have tons of teacher-created resources. So many good things up there. And don't forget to check out their apparel designed specifically for teachers. Look good and support teachers. That's something I can get behind. Use code HaugerHistory10 to save 10% on all items and follow them on social media at Amped Up Learning for their monthly giveaways of Amazon gift cards, lessons, and apparel. Man, supporting teachers while also supporting teachers, that sounds like something we could really get behind. And don't forget to use that code HaugerHistory10 to save 10% on all items at ampeduplearning.com. What a great way to start. Now let's move on to the show. Thank you so much for supporting Inspiring Teachers. Welcome to a Friday edition of Inspiring Teachers and the last of December of 2019. How the year flies by, especially when it's only November when you record it. And what a great time to spend some time to go into the weekend and be excited about everything that's going on in her world and my world. Jenny Pieratt joins myself today. Tavis is in his classroom woodworking. My co-host is normally here with me. And we're going to discuss the benefits of project-based learning and how her journey in education, her role in crafted education, and her website, craftedcurriculum.com, can help boost teachers' ability to stimulate learning in their classrooms. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a great thing to spotlight California teachers that are doing amazing things. And I've been following your social media channel for a little bit from a couple different accounts that I'm logged into because I like a few of the things that you do a lot. And resources for elementary and secondary school connects with me because I was a K-8 teacher and now I'm a high school teacher. And I really think that teachers who can clear and efficiently process activities and create informing, engaging projects get so much more attention, stimulation, enjoyment. And thus, when all those things in the brain are lighting up, I always think the learning is happening and you know it's happening as a teacher. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into a specialty of advocating for project-based learning and how your educational career rolled out as well?
Yeah, so I started teaching right out of college. So my first job, I was 22, and I took a long-term sub position for a class. And I actually never learned about project-based learning in my credentialing program. I didn't know what it was. It was just kind of innately how I thought it best to engage kids because like you just said, I knew that if I had their attention, right? And I started out teaching 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So I knew if I had their attention that the content would come. I just had to hook them, initially. And so I did, again, what I didn't know was project-based learning for 4 years before one of my students, Michael Dooley, said, "Hey, Mrs. Pieratt, you should really go check out this place called High Tech High." I just went and visited and it's totally what you do. And I was like, "Oh, what do I do?" I didn't is this a thing? Yeah. So he's like, "Just go visit." And I went and visited and I was like, oh yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea that there was strategy behind it and there was, systems and structures for it and that there were so many people who were doing it just like I was. It just wasn't where I was at the time. I was in a really traditional private school at the time. So, so I left that next year, and started teaching at High Tech High. And so I was a founding staff member at one of their schools there and taught grades 5 through 10. So I got to see a lot of different ages and projects looked, differently for different grade levels. And loved what I did. I loved the kids. After 11 years, I felt like it was time for me to spread my wings a little bit. And so I decided to start teaching teachers how to do project-based learning. So I've been doing that now for 6 years, actually now 7 years, 4 of which have been on my own with Craft Ed.
That's really cool. And you offer a variety of e-courses and books as well. And you kind of design it for teachers to pace themselves and get into it so it doesn't seem like such a daunting change. Because I was the same training experience where it wasn't something I was taught a whole lot. And then I read a couple articles about it. But mostly I found out, like you did, that, hey, I'd hear, Mr. Hauger, why are we always doing projects? Well, we're project to project to project. And they noticed that like we jumped from big thing to big thing because I really liked a deeper level where if we're doing a simple read and learn and, respond with an exit ticket or something, I didn't find that the learning was being grasped onto for the long term, and it would be in that short term retention pile. But when I started having them run for government office and make campaign signs and advocate that they have to persuade special interest groups to join them or they won't be able to win the election, then now suddenly they're really finding out what those things are because they're experiencing them in my room. So that's one of my favorite ones that I've created. And it was just appealing to me that when they were dressing up as Greek polis members and competing against each other, how much more fun they were having. And they were calling each other out when they weren't doing something formally in the practices of the Greeks. And I started to realize that there is place for all kinds of lessons and variety in a classroom. But that's when I saw that this was a route that was for me. You mentioned how your educational career started and how you went from a private school. I did the same, and you transitioned to a new location. What made you want to start developing e-courses? And I'll show them on the screen right now so people can see what you get at your website. But how did that become something that you were interested in doing?
That came much later. When I first started working with teachers, I was supporting them working for a company called New Tech Network and then Buck Institute for Education. And so I got to see the struggles that teachers are really facing. It's hard. Doing project-based learning is really hard. It's a heavy lift. And so, I walked away from those experiences saying it needs to be more bite-sized. Like it can't be something that's just thrown at them over 40 hours and teachers are expected to walk away and make it happen. Like it just needs to be bite-sized, smaller, more success along the way so that people are more willing to continue to try doing it. So for me, that became kind of my mission of how do I go about supporting teachers in a way that really honors the realities that they're all facing and really meets them where they're at. And sometimes where they're at is sitting in, a parking lot waiting for their kids to get done at soccer practice. And sometimes where they're at is, we do virtual project coaching. We call it PBL in your PJs. Sometimes it's 8:00 at night after you get the kids to bed. It looks so different for everyone. And I think it's really important to honor where everybody's coming from and just meet them where they are.
One of the things I liked is the tiers that you work with, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, from differentiation through planning and exhibiting. And I like that a lot. I feel like that's one of the things that I enjoy doing is sometimes I don't have time to fully think about a hands-on with kinesthetic and tactile learning, but I do have enough time to turn something from a learn about to a do is the way I'm going to put it for a second. Like we're learning about labor's response to industrialization. And then in the Hauger history page on TPT or on Amped Up Learning, I created an idea of like, well, why don't they make protest signs? Why don't they learn about these areas of research and make their own signs? And then at the same time, while they're doing it, have to summarize a couple of things about some famous protests in American and world history. And then I was really jazzed about it because I was thinking it was a weak idea until all I did was brainstorm a little bit about, well, what would that look like? And I have a couple TAs, which is a fortunate thing to have. And so I can say, hey, from a student perspective, does this look like something good? And one of them isn't someone that was a super high performer in the class. And he's like, this looks fun. And I'm like, I nailed it. If this looks good to you, this was a good thing to do. And once we do it once, then, as a teacher, you will look and see how well it did, you revise and you fix. I just think it's cool that it's one of the things that you specialize in. And you have a lot of focuses in education, but it's what I wanted to kind of pick your brain about and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool too, the two examples that you just highlighted on this call so far, if I didn't count, but if someone were to count all of the verbs that you said, that to me is
cool.
Right? Like that's engagement. Like students are doing things, they're actively involved. And I think that's the beauty of what project-based learning offers. It doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Doesn't mean that traditional best practices don't apply. They're in there. It's just that students are so much more actively engaged in the process of their learning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. What would you say is your why of being in the field of education? When people ask you, I'm sure there are many talents that you have based on the creativity and the ability to write and the ability to concisely explain topics. Why is it that you're in the field of benefiting teachers and students?
I believe it's what's good for kids. And I think when that's at your core, it feels really good to do work that's meaningful. So when I go into a school, and it's not always easy to do this work, sometimes it's met with a little bit of resistance.
Mhm.
But I think, when a teacher and I can sit down together and look at something that, maybe he or she can say, it hasn't quite hooked the students like I hope that it would, or whatever it might be, for us to sit down and kind of lay out all of their curriculum and just do the work, like roll up our sleeves and create something that we know is going to be engaging for students. That feels really good. And I've seen what it does for kids. I've seen what it does for entire communities, that shift, right? Whether it be through exhibitions of learning, it truly does bring in the community. And when students talk about their work and it's just a completely different level of learning and they're proud of it, I think that's something that every child deserves to have. So it feels good. That's definitely at the core of it. My why is it's about the kids.
It sounds very rewarding. And I'm so grateful that you would take a few minutes to talk about it. And we'll have the website up on the screen and linked to in the description. But do you want to tell everyone where they can find more about you on social media and give your website one more time so people can check it out?
Yeah, so my social media, I'm at crafted, CRAFTED _Jenny P. And I really strive to create posts that I think are going to be resourceful for teachers. So whether it be project ideas or tips and tricks, whatever it might be, to help them make the lift a little bit lighter in terms of implementing project-based learning.
Great. And for people who are listening right now who might on their way out to a weekend or a holiday and finish up their holiday break and get back into the scope of planning for January, what's something that you think with a new year coming that a teacher might be able to try to start walking before they run, maybe, or a tool that you really like offering people when you're just speaking to them for the first time?
Probably the number one thing I hear teachers ask for is models. So on my website, I have, you can search by elementary or secondary projects, and it's just a whole host of potential ideas, that are mapped onto standards. So they're real world issues mapped onto the standards, and they're just starting points, because I know sometimes that's the hardest part, is where do I even begin?
Yeah. Wonderful sentiments. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us on Inspiring Teachers. We hope that you have something new coming out in the future. Come back and talk to us again or join us for a panel with some other guests from California. And just thanks for all you're doing for students and teachers everywhere.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, until next time, everybody, thank you so much. I'm Danny Hauger. Enjoy your holiday season. You've earned this break, and bring back some of that freshness and creativity to the classroom. We'll see you in 2020 when Tavis will be back alongside. Until then, class is dismissed.